right, welcome back to another episode of Culture Dads. So, how we doing, Mr. Mike?
I'm doing very well, Dave. How are you doing?
I'm doing okay. I pretty excited to talk about this this movie that we're going to get into, Ninja Scroll, right? We're going to talk about Ninja Scroll, which Ninja Scroll is a pretty interesting movie because it is probably one of the, like, there's probably like 4, 5, 6 big like Japanime movies that are kind of commonly accepted to be, these are the movies that everybody likes. This isn't just anime. This is cool for you to like if you think anime is gay, right? So, which I am in that camp. I like Ninja Scroll. I like Fist of the North Star. I like Ghost in the Shell, Akira, and like Dragon Ball Z, and like that's about it. So, but Ninja Scroll is something I tuned in. I had it on VHS back in 1998, 97, 99, around those years. And I remember when I first watched it, I was like, this is great. The entire movie, top to bottom, is just a tremendous piece of storytelling. And it was designed with Western audiences in mind. So we can get into all that. But Mike, what's your take on Ninja Scroll?
So yeah, my take on Ninja Scroll is that it's the best action movie of all time. There, I said it, man. I'm not kidding. Actually, this is my favorite action movie. I am not a huge anime guy. You mentioned basically all the animes that I like. Yeah, Akira, Ghost in the Shell, this one, Ninja Scroll, and that's about it. I could maybe do a little tiny bit of Naruto once in a while. I've never seen Dragon Ball Z. I've seen like 5 minutes of Cowboy Bebop, but it's like I'm not an anime guy. But this movie is like something very different. I mean, it's classic anime, but it's done so well that like like there's so many great action movies out there. I mean, you could think of like Conan. There's so many. I mean, Conan's great, but it's great for different reasons, I would say. I mean, it's certainly not all different reasons. I love that like Conan is like, it's so barbaric. It's like vaguely pre-Christian and kind of like it's got like some sort of like deep lore to it as well. But as for like pure action, get your pulse racing, like jump scare, terrifying, creepy, spooky shit, nothing beats Ninja Scroll in my book. The only critique that I think like I can imagine is that it's a cartoon. Like for me, that's not really a critique, although I'm not like big on anime and stuff. And obviously I think you're probably on the same page because, you know, we watched a lot of Western animation for one of the previous episodes. No problems with animation movies. But it's just so based. I mean, like everyone in this movie has the reflexes of a cat. Everyone is just like insanely tough. It's ridiculous. Yeah. And the pace of the movie is just so fast. Like even plot wise, you get these like jump cuts between locations that give it like a sense of speed. I mean, not to mention the speed of the action, right? And it's also like creepy and mystical. It's got this almost hallucinogenic quality to it. You know, there's like heroic stuff. There's self-sacrifice, there's loyalty to your clan, and there's a hell of a lot of blood. I would love to see a live action remake of this. I mean, there's so many live action remakes already, but this one actually kind of deserves it. So yeah, overall, that's kind of my take on Ninja Scroll. I see it as an unbelievably good action movie.
Yeah, I agree with all that stuff. It's everything from the color palettes to the style of animation. You got to understand, like, there's some scenes in this movie where there's like millions of bees or tons of snakes, just like swarms, right? This was before you could like digitally duplicate things. They drew every bee by hand. Every single bee in them swarms was drawn by hand. This whole movie,
1993.
This was drawn by hand. So this movie was a massive undertaking, and it really goes to show the level of talent and skill that the director had. The director, I can't remember these kinds of ching chong names.
I know what you mean.
Yoshi Honda Kawasaki, whatever the hell his name is.
I wouldn't know.
It's something like that.
Yeah.
It sounds like that. Yoshi Honda Cow. So I'll just call him Yoshi. So the director Yoshi, he actually Ninja Scroll was not his first film. He started out. He made one that's called like Journey into the Lens Land or something, the Lensman or something like that. And then he made another one called Wicked City, which Wicked City is actually kind of interesting too. It's not nearly as good as Ninja Scroll, but it has a lot of those like freaky cosmic horror, body horror kind of vibes in there. And then you get to Ninja Scroll, and he also did the sequel to Vampire Hunter D, which is called Bloodlust, and he also did a Highlander adaptation, an animated Highlander adaptation, which a lot of people said was really good. I'll have to actually go check that out. But
yeah,
this guy,
I heard about that. That does sound interesting. And I forgot about Vampire Hunter D. I mean, for me, that one, like if Ninja Scroll's a 10 out of 10, Vampire Hunter D is like an 8 out of 10. It's still very good.
Yeah, it's definitely a. This is what this guy. This is the reason that these things appeal to us. The director. Yoshi Honda, I don't know, Yoshi. Director Yoshi. Yeah, one of them things. He he was not an anime guy. He drew like he drew like what are they called? Mangas, right? He drew the mangas and everything like that. That's what he did. But that's not what he liked. His inspirations were movies like Blade Runner, Die Hard, The Thing. He was watching these kinds of movies. Another thing he quoted, he really, really loved were like the old school Western TV shows, Gunsmoke and Bonanza. He liked John Wayne and stuff. And you really see this shine through in his characters. Ninja Scroll, the character Jubei, and then his film before it, Wicked City, which the character's name was Taki. Both of these guys are these kind of like aloof, jokey kind of good guys for the sake of good guys. They're literally Deckard from Blade Runner, both of them. Like all of his good guys are like this. And they also has this hint of John Wayne, like, he's this mysterious guy, comes in, everybody knows he's the boss, but he's kind of aloof, and is that you, John Wayne? Like that's in all of his stuff, right? So he had this Western audience in mind because he was directly inspired by Western action movies and Western TV shows, and he liked Bruce Willis and Stallone and Schwarzenegger and these guys. These were his inspirations for his characters. So that's why we see so many familiar motifs in his movies, and that's why it's familiar to us.
Yeah, that makes sense. Like, learning that after the fact, like, I probably watched it for the first time back in like 96 or 97 or something like that. And I remember it too. I remember, like, because this was about the time when I was starting to smoke weed and like smoke a ton of weed. And it's like when you kind of discover that as a teenager or whatever, it's like you kind of rediscover everything, all your aesthetic, like, preferences that you loved, but you like music, like you listen to a record that you loved like as a kid or whatever, and then you listen to it stoned. It's like a whole new world, right? Mm-hmm. So there I am, I'm like sitting at home, stoned out of my tree, and I was watching like whatever the Canadian Cartoon Network was called. I think it was called Teletoon at the time. And I was watching Ren and Stimpy, and Ren and Stimpy is pretty fucking weird. Like, I think anybody who's seen that can really kind of.
It's pretty degenerate too.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, like, it's got nothing. I mean, for all the stuff that's kind of beyond the pale in Ninja Scroll, it's like Ren and Stimpy's got some of that too, right? So. And I'm like, watching Ren and Stimpy, and the commercial comes on. So I'm flipping around, and I like find this other cartoon or whatever on some other channel. And it's this anime, and I'm watching it. I just can't take my eyes off it. It's just super intense and like crazy, like I say, hallucinogenic. And I'm like, it goes to commercial. I flip back to Ren and Stimpy, and I'm like, what the fuck was that? So I go back to it, and I just like, I was entranced by it, and this is of course Ninja Scroll, and I think that the violence and everything of it is like it's so off scale. Like, I mean, for anybody who hasn't seen it, I mean, some people just can't get into anime. It looks like a kids show. It's kind of silly like that, right? I don't know. I just it doesn't have any of that sort of kids show vibe at all. And it makes sense that he had taken some of the Western style like action tropes and sort of like filtered it through this almost like mystical Japanese like Shinto lens, that's a million miles removed from like Die Hard, but of course it's got like some of the like basic techniques for putting together a great action movie. Like it's got none of this anime shit that you think of where it's like Taisetsu no Muno, protect my balls. Let's fighting love. Like nothing like that at all. It's just like it's like pure. I don't know. I wish I had a better word for it, but it seems very mystical to me. And there's a lot of spooky shit going on here. Like there's constant religious and mystical imagery. You think of like the plague invested village at the very beginning. That kind of sets the tone. It's kind of like weird, and you got like the creepy old man ninja himself, who's kind of like he's a little bit degenerate in his own way or whatever. And you think of like the snake woman scene where he like hypnotizes Jubei and then like sheds her skin and all that, and then she like you meet her again later in the shrine with that like old woman that's like chanting or whatever.
Come to the land of Buddha with me.
Yeah. And then there's that scene too where it's like the guy who gets his arms ripped off earlier in the movie, he's like edging towards the cliff with no arms and his eyes sewn shut and stuff like that. It's like, I don't know. It's like it's crazy the amount of just thought that went into this. I just love the aesthetic. It just transports you to somewhere that's not at all Western. And I love that. It's just like, it takes you to a place, kind of like what we were saying before in the first Culture Dads episode with The Godfather, where it's like, I mean, this is obviously closer to home, but it puts you in like 19th century Sicily for 2 hours or whatever it is. And you get the same vibe. You get all the, all of the, worldview that sort of comes out of that, and you get that as well in Ninja Scroll. So I think that's part of why I love it. It's just got the flavor of feudal 17th century Japan and all the like all the weird esoteric shit that goes along with that. And of course, ninjas. You can't go wrong with ninjas. That's just pretty awesome. So yeah.
And there's a lot of it in there that is as you mentioned before, regressive, right? That would be problematic for today. The good guys in the equation, it's sort of there's a little bit of a political backdrop. It shows kind of the politics of feudal Japan.
Yeah, and it's almost like a piece of historical fiction, sort of set in the Tokugawa era, right?
Mm-hmm. Exactly. It was about rival clans in the feudal area vying for control of a gold mine, right? And there's conspiracies underneath it. You got the shogun in the dark who are trying to overthrow the rightful Japanese rulership, and there's a lot that goes on with it politically as well that guys like us would find sympathetic, right? We would be sympathetic to these kinds of narratives, and there are I don't know if these are motifs that also exist, and because we got to remember that Buddhism, which is kind of, you see, there's the religious landscape of Japan is a little bit complicated, because unlike in the West, where there was some syncretism that happened early on and everything like that, but there was a lot of like tension, and like one side fought the other and won or lost or whatever. In Japan, Buddhism really just melted with their native beliefs, which we understand today to be Shinto, right? Shinto was an evolution of native Japanese like animist kind of beliefs, and then it melded together with Buddhism. So that is kind of the overlap of those two religions kind of make the Japanese religious worldview. And you see the eschatology of this in the story. Yeah, you have the eight devils of Kamon, right? Or the ninjas. There's Mike's going to talk about this. There's quite a bit of mention of going to hell, the Japanese hell. And I would also point out that the eight devils of Kamon and how Jubei, the hero, has to go through and fight every single one of them is this motif of the hero having to overcome the obstacles, right? You like same thing like Hercules and his trials and like all this kind of stuff. So that motif of the hero having to overcome increasingly difficult obstacles, and then in order to arrive at his final goal, like the boss fight, is something that's very Western and Indo-European.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's interesting that you mentioned about Buddhism and the sort of like melding that happened in Japan, and that's very much the case. I mean, Zen, which is a Chinese form of Buddhism, certainly took in Japan. Like it was able to take root in the native soil there and become a almost like Japanese form of Buddhism. And it's interesting because Buddhism is such a strongly axial age religion. It's for those that aren't that familiar with this. There's a transition sometime. I mean, it happened in different places at different times, roughly between about 1000 and like 500 BC in many different places in the world where religions and basically the worldview of peoples changed significantly from what Max Weber has called a magical view of the world to an ethical view of the world. And that doesn't mean that, beforehand, like people just did whatever the fuck they wanted. Ethical means something specific, and essentially what it means is agent neutral ethics. Conduct is to be judged in terms of universal principles. There's a lot more to it than that, but that's enough to go on. And this is what it changed to. It changed to this ethical view of the world from a magical view of the world, where it was almost something a little bit more like a mechanical, very ritualistic kind of religion that didn't have a lot of sort of philosophy behind it, but it was sort of the philosophy kind of grows out of this deeper substratum. Anyway, this is the transition between pre-axial to axial age religions. Buddhism is an extremely axial religion. It's very deeply philosophical. It's very much, and here's another difference. There's a handful of sort of differences in this transition. One of the things about Buddhism is extremely propositional. It's the kind of it's a religion that is a belief, which is very different than an orthopraxic religion like the pre-axial religions, which are very much more about practice and what you do and the kind of like carrying out the rites with the utmost fidelity and not as much attention paid to the sort of spirit behind it, although that's obviously part of it too. I mean, think of Buddhism, the religion being it's the religion of the Four Noble Truths, right? Truths, as in we hold these truths to be self-evident. It's a propositional religion. It's about a belief, very much so. I mean, there's more to it than that, but that's kind of the that's kind of the innovation that happens between the transition here. Anyway, that's Buddhism, and contrast that with Shinto. Shinto in Japan, this is the native Japanese religion that was obviously carried from a very, very remote time because it bears all the marks of one of these pre-axial religions. Of course, there is a mythology to it, like there is with all religions. And mythology is propositional. It tells a story. It's a series of propositions, a description of reality. But it is so orthopraxic as well. It's very much kind of going in the same direction as a lot of Indo-European religions, which are pretty much like paradigmatically pre-axial. Shinto involves a lot of ancestor worship. There's a guy named Nick Land, whom I was sort of in touch with like years ago on Twitter, right around the time we were putting out Ancient City, and he tweeted something out. He's like, and this was in when the white Sharia meme was really big. Do you remember that? He was like, we don't need white Sharia, we need white Shinto. And I'm like, oh, dude, I have got a book for you. You need to read this. And it was The Ancient City, of course, right? Because that basically is white Shinto right there. That's like a perfect description of the religion of the Ancient City. You know, Shinto involves all these elaborate funerals, feasting of the dead, the visiting of the family graves. There's a festival called Bon or Obon that they celebrate. It's very, very similar to the Hindu Pitru Paksha. And yeah, household rituals are extremely important in Shinto. So it's very, very similar to kind of the archaic pagan religions in Europe, very much further removed. So anyway, it's interesting. There's this meld between like a very axial religion in Buddhism and a very pre-axial religion in Shinto. And I did a little bit of a deep dive here. You mentioned before that there's a lot of mention of hell in the movie, which I found very interesting because, you know, hell is I think of it as a kind of European thing almost. You know, obviously there's an underworld in many, many religions. And I was like, is this just like sort of a translation thing, or like what kind of hell is there in Shinto? And doing a dive into this, there's something uncanny that I kind of uncovered, which is that hell is what they call yomi in Shinto. And it's a dark, cold place, you know, beneath the earth where the souls of the dead dwell. The dead live this like gloomy, shadowy existence. It's a lot like the Greek Hades, actually.
Or the Germanic hell.
Exactly. I mean, like, all these things kind of grow out of the same theological complex. At least the European ones do. So it's, you know, their conception of the underworld, like the ancient Greeks and the ancient Norse and Germanic peoples, it makes sense that they would kind of have a family resemblance with their underworld conception. And somehow the Japanese have a very similar one as well. It's presided over by this god called Izanagi. And Izanagi is the female part of a pair of gods that are like one of the sort of originary gods, the ancestor gods born at the end of 7 generations of gods at the beginning of the world. So they're a pair, the male and female. They're a couple. You know, they created the islands of Japan. This is I think it's called the Kojiki, which is basically like their sort of mythical history, Japanese. And anyway, these ancestor gods, they gave birth to all of the other gods, or most of the other gods of the Japanese pantheon, but it eventually took its toll on the wife, Izanami, and she died. But the husband, Izanagi, you know, couldn't live without her, so he follows her down to the underworld, Yomi. But because she'd eaten the fruit or like a food in Yomi, she couldn't return back to the surface. She couldn't come back to the land of the living. So the husband, Izanagi, pleads with the gods of the underworld, and they eventually grant the wife release on the condition that he, as they're escaping, that he not look at her before they escape. But because it took so long to release her, or I can't remember exactly what it was, Izanagi, the husband, he was impatient, and he looked back anyway. And what happens next is kind of not really clear. Different accounts say different things. In one account, the husband like runs terrified out of hell or whatever. And in another one, the wife is like starts to rot or has already started rotting or whatever. But what makes this really interesting to me is the very strong and obvious parallel with the myth of Orpheus and Eurydice, which, for those not familiar, this is the Greek myth where the musician Orpheus, the inventor of the lyre, he tries to rescue his wife, who's been taken underground into Hades, the underworld. He's trying to rescue her, but he's told not to look back at her as she follows him out. And of course he does, and he loses her. It's the same fucking story, which is crazy because, I think the Kojiki was written in like 800 AD or something like that.
Mhm.
Obviously the Greek myth much earlier, but it's like there's no way that there's any sort of like cross-pollination of cultures or anything like that. So what this suggests is that there is an ancestor, a common ancestor between them. It must be extraordinarily ancient. And I think it's the ancient North Eurasian cultural complex, which basically goes back to something like 10 or 11,000 BC. Wow. This is an archaeologically attested culture. And this culture has this ancient North Eurasian culture. I mean, you can't say that they are the one ancestor of the Indo-Europeans and the East Asians and whatever, because obviously there's like a bunch of mixing and stuff that goes on through all of this. So it's like they are one sort of stream that feeds into what eventually became the Japanese and what eventually became the Greeks and other Europeans as well. Very, very ancient culture. And I mean, as a kind of side note, like, apart from this, applying to Ninja Scroll and Japanese mysticism, this ancient North Eurasian also seems to be, by comparative mythology, the source of things like ideas like the world tree and the hellhound that guards the underworld and stuff. So it's like it's crazy that, like, with this powerful tool that is comparative mythology, we can reconstruct not just the ancestor of Europeans and Indians and Iranians, but the ancestor of those people that also is the ancestor of East Asians, Uralic peoples like the Finns, and some others like Turks, like Turkic peoples and stuff like that. So I find the shit very fascinating, and it makes sense to me on like a very deep level. Like, tell me if I'm reading too far into this, but I think that the shared patrimony of the notion of the underworld and the sort of mythical complex that we share with even however distant with the Japanese is kind of something that, I don't know, it makes me personally very fascinated with their brand of mysticism. Even though like Buddhism has come in and sort of changed things a little bit, I think the backbone of all that spooky shit that you see in Ninja Scroll, it's coming mostly out of Shinto. Like, you can see a lot of different symbols in the movie of Shinto. I don't know what they're all called, but like, I mean, it's very straightforward. And I think that like sort of the backbone of all that spooky, weird, mystical shit that like we love about that movie is kind of coming out of this very ancient past. So, I mean, certainly this is not something that I would have picked up on as like a 16-year-old kid watching this movie for the first time or whatever. But I think that's part of why I love it. So anyway, I'll leave that on the table there. So sorry to rant for a while.
No, it's good. Yeah, no, I definitely agree. A lot of the really spooky elements. So first, I wanted to touch on, Mike mentioned about how there's this like parallel with this kind. I think part of the reason that we get so fascinated with like the samurai era and feudal Japan and these kinds of things, because there is a pretty strong parallel between what was happening over there and what happened over here. You had the Buddhist and Confucianist Chinese that were sort of like the Holy Roman Empire at that time, and the Japanese were like the barbarians. In fact, the Chinese literally called them barbarians, considered them barbarians, and they lived in a very tribal, warfaring, superstitious, spiritual place. So when we watch these Japanese movies that really have that native Japanese spirit, and for people that don't realize, when we in the West, when we say Japanese, we kind of picture one type of guy or girl or whatever, one type of ethnicity. Native Japan was actually made up of several distinct ethnicities. You had like the Ainu people, the Ryu, what are they called, the Ryu Maki or whatever, and then later you had like the Yamamoto people, and they're like kind of they have admixture from people from the Korean Peninsula, and there's like a bunch, and then there's like these islanders called Obu. I can't remember all the words, but there was like quite a mix of of different ethnicities that were like warring among themselves before China even touched Japan. So Japan is this really crazy, weird, ancient place that was very, very barbaric and wild until sort of recently. You know what I mean? Until we're talking, 15, 1600s, when you started to see like the unifications of Japan and like all that kind of stuff. But before that, Japan was a very wild, mystical, magical kind of place. And when we watch these films that have this native spirit of Japan, we are seeing real native Japanese belief bleed through. The only way you can construct something that is like truly, truly freaky and uncanny and terrifying is if you have a real fear of that thing. And the Japanese, they really true. Not all of them. They're kind of. I think that they said there's like a poll. It's like something like 80% of them can consider themselves a religious or whatever. But however, participation at the Shinto shrines is unreal. Like if you go see like the Shinto,
it's very strong.
They have lines going down. Thousands of people come to these shrines like every single day, and they have this very specific way that they wash their hands. They ring this bell, they make a donation. It's like this orthopraxic thing that they know that they must do in order to appease the spirits that they believe in. They call them kamis. The Japanese people believe in these spirits, right? So, along with this belief in these spirits and these spirits of the land and what some people would call superstition comes fear in malicious spirits as well. And only people that really actually fear malevolent entities and malicious spirits and stuff can put these spirits in art in a truly terrifying way. And that's what the director of Ninja Scroll really, really did when he made these Devils of Khamon. He took his inspiration from movies in the West like The Thing, probably other horror stuff, cosmic horror specifically. The Japanese really love cosmic horror. And then he brought in his like this like subconscious or maybe even conscious, this belief in like a spiritual magical world and put it together to create something that was really, really uncanny and psychedelic and bizarre. And it was just it's a really, really interesting blend. Like he's got, like I mentioned before, he's got the political backdrops. There's these Western hero motifs, and the Western hero motifs aren't that obvious. A lot of the stuff I've seen that he took from movies like Die Hard, at face value, it looks like, as Mike said, that Ninja Scroll is a million miles away from Die Hard. You have to look for things like camera angles, like things like the hero getting beat up and then thrown, and he like tumbles all over the place, and he quickly draws for his weapon. Like that is a Western action movie motif. So there's lots of this stuff that's in there, and I just think Ninja Scroll is a great blend of all of these things, and we get to see a very accessible for us as Western people and enjoyable and well-crafted demonstration of Japanese spiritual beliefs and traditional Japanese worldview. So I think the whole thing is like a masterpiece.
Yeah, I really like it, man. I mean, we should really review something sometime that we fucking hate, because everything we reviewed so far we love. I think that would be kind of interesting. But anyway, yeah, I'm a huge fan of this movie. It's got like it's just got something very, very like natively Japanese that sort of goes way beyond anything that's like most other animes, even things like Akira and Ghost in the Shell. And of course, part of it is that there's no futuristic element to this movie at all, which actually is kind of refreshing, I find, in an anime. I mean, not that I'm super familiar with anime that much, but most of the time there is something like Akira, obviously Ghost in the Shell, super futuristic, right? It's cyberpunk through and through. Yeah. Akira's got the same style and everything, but maybe somewhat less cyberpunky, but still very much so. Ninja Scroll is different. It's set in the past. It's set in the barbaric past, the feudal past. And of course, as you mentioned, like Japan, from the Chinese point of view, is a very barbaric place, especially, you know, up until about 150 years ago or something like that. It's distant. It's over there. It's kind of like the nether regions that like is kind of beyond beyond the known world or whatever. And I think it's a good thing for you to bring up that it's they're very much viewed as kind of like on the outside, like they're on the margins of civilization, and there is a kind of there's kind of crossover with the Norse or the Germanic peoples, how they would have related to the Roman Empire, the Roman Republic, and the Mediterranean world more generally, which had obviously been civilized for much longer by the time that the two really encountered each other. Mm-hmm. And I think part of that's reflected in the plot and sort of like what moves everything, like what moves the story forward in Ninja Scroll. There's very little ethical aspect to the plot. Again, what I mean by ethical is in this Max Weber conception, ethical versus magical. There's so much magic in this movie. It's crazy. And I mean, even though there's very little ethical aspect to it, that's not to say that there are no morals. It's just that for these people, for the people in the movie, and for the people in feudal Japan and more generally, and you know, pre-axial peoples, morality is bounded within the clan. Again, it's not like do whatever the hell you want. It's that morality is something that is fundamentally agent relative is the technical term for it. I mean, you know, there's so much violence in Ninja Scroll, but you know, this is not like Blood Meridian or something where like everybody is just an irredeemable piece of shit, and it's interesting because of that dynamic or whatever. There are no heroes in Blood Meridian. There are heroes in Ninja Scroll. Right? Jubei is a hero, obviously. In a sense, Kigero, the female ninja, is a kind of like female hero as well. But yeah, basically the kind of ethics that grow out of this like clannish feudal, you know, pre-modern structure is that some moral agents basically have no moral consideration, right? Like there are some people to whom you owe no duties at all. And in a sense, it kind of reminds me a little bit like a Norse saga. Take, for example, in, I believe it's Volsunga Saga, the thing where you've got like the two, I think it's a father and a son, Sigmund and Sinfjotli, where it's a very long epic, but it's the episode where they put on the wolf skins and they go and like hunt travelers for a while. Just, I think it kind of basically to like sharpen their skills for the fight with their true enemy, which is I believe it's Sinfjotli's foster father or something. I forget now. Anyway, the idea is that these travelers are basically kind of owed no moral consideration, and that there wouldn't have been a problem in this time and place with basically going and pillaging these people, right? Because you owe loyalty to your clan. That is the horizon of your moral consideration, right? Morality is basically down to personal loyalty. Nothing really matters outside of loyalty to family and clan, which is something that's like, it's a little bit like it's kind of like beyond what we can kind of understand as moderns, right? The idea that it's that the duties that you owe are just strictly kind of bounded within the family, and everything outside of that is kind of like more up for grabs or whatever. Hard for us to kind of understand today, but you know, the idea of basically being that your lord or your father or the chieftain is basically his word is the law, essentially, right? Like that is your moral law. And there actually is a little throwaway line in the movie that really kind of stuck out for me in that respect, that it, you know, illustrating the same ethic, where it's when Jubei, it's like a flashback where Jubei is thinking about like his old friend that, I forget exactly how it turns out because it's a very minor plot point. It's a flashback where the hero of the movie is thinking about like how his Gemma basically turned his old friend against him. Gemma being like the main bad guy, and he by I forget how exactly, he must have like lied about something or whatever. But anyway, his like Jubei's old like childhood friend or whatever is now has to kill him. And he's like, don't do it, man. Like, he's just trying to turn you against me. And, the friend is like, forgive me, Jubei. His word is the law. You know what I mean? And that line to me really sort of illustrates the sort of, the house father authority, the kind of clan chieftain authority that would have prevailed in a culture like the Norse, in a culture like the feudal Japanese, and most of these like tribal pre-axial cultures. So you kind of get some of this very, very ancient ethical aspect peeking through this movie that seems quite amoral in general, although there is, of course, some sort of code of honor beneath it. And I find that really it's interesting to me because that is basically absent today. I think it's kind of cliche to say that this movie couldn't be made today, but I think it's true. I think Ninja Scroll could not be made today. There's certainly some scenes with like sexual violence that would not be allowed to be made today at all. But it's more than that. It's this ethic, this tribal ethic is something that would have to be problematized today in film. So it's beautiful to watch these old movies from the 90s. I talked a bit about Falling Down with Frothy Midjord on his Decameron Festival. Here's another one that couldn't be made today for various reasons because it's too problematic, basically. And I think Ninja Scroll is another one of those. I actually read a few reviews just online or whatever about like Ninja Scroll, and a lot of what it's saying of recent reviews is it's like, it's too regressive. It's interesting. Great action, but the plot's a little thin, which I disagree with. And most of all, it's problematic. And I'm just like, well, that's kind of what I like about it, actually. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, these people, these like, lib goofballs, when they that's like their number one criticism of everything. The plot's a little thin. When they say the plot is thin, what they're saying is that there's not enough character introspection. They want people that sit and self-reflect in their head and go through and explore the dark parts of themselves. Like they demand character stuff. Another thing, there's not enough dialogue. There's not enough this. There's not, because they don't like storytelling through action, right? And we talk about this with I talk about this all the time with Pulp Fiction. Pulp Fiction is inherently anti-progressive. You just can't do it because it's completely based on action, atmosphere, movement, pacing. This is what tells the story in Pulp. This is what tells the story, and I could argue that Ninja Scroll is a very pulpy. It's effectively a Japanese sword and sorcery.
I would
movie.
agree with that.
You know what I mean? So it tells story through action, through scenes, through atmosphere. It doesn't sit and have a bunch of dialogue. It's not this like postmodern, let's explore our souls and be and like all this stuff. It doesn't have any of that. So progressives aren't going to like it because they're threatened by action. They're threatened by because that's a very masculine way to tell a story, is through action, through pacing, through interactions with the environment, right? And they want wishy-washy, thinky think, and talky talk, and all that gay stuff. And speaking of gay stuff, and we talked about this and this is another reason it could not be remade. We talked about in our Western animation episode, talking about Necron in Fire and Ice, how he's
I was just about to say the same. I think I was going to go in the same direction you are.
Yeah.
But yeah, by all means, have at it.
So, one thing that cannot happen today is this depiction of the antagonist being this well-bred, but also type of guy, right? You have Genma, it's explained that he's like, he makes love to both men and women. Guy's and then this guy beneath him, you remember him? He is like the
guy with the string or whatever.
The guy
right?
with the wire in his mouth and all that.
Yeah.
It's established right away that he's well bred, right? He's sitting there with his back straight. He's doing the calligraphy. The Japanese calligraphy was something that was completely exclusive to the noble class. Regular people did not do that. Regular people couldn't even read. So it was like it established him through people that understand Japanese culture, like Japanese people, when they see it, this is a well-bred guy. Also, he's a so it's like they were these like these bourgeois, bougie, like douchey kind of bad guys, but they were also immensely cruel and calculating and intelligent. And you notice the further down in the hierarchy of the Devils of Khamon, like the more primal and more meat-headed and rash they are.
Yeah.
Right. The first guy, the rock guy, was his name Tessai or something. He's like trying to rape bitches. Like he's just drinking blood. Like he's just like a complete animal. You know? He's just like ripping arms off, drinking their blood.
The violence is so fucking over the top, man.
I know.
That's what I love about this. Sometimes I found myself laughing out loud just watching it. It's so fucking over the top, this violence, you know? It's like, first time I was watching it, I wasn't laughing though. It was terrifying. But yeah, that the part where he rips the guy's arms off and drinks the blood is just fucking awesome.
Yeah. And then as the devils, as you go up higher, like then you got the bees guy who's like is so like dumb. He let Jubei tricks him into going to the water and killing himself. Yeah. Then you got the snake lady who has this, which there's something about, I'm not that familiar, but there is something about snake tattoos and animal tattoos among like certain Japanese monks where they have this like belief about like tattooing spirits on them or something. I'm not familiar with it, but there is something to that. But she's so like narcissistic that she just gets killed. But as it goes up, they get more cunning. You got the shadow guy who's really formidable and weird and has all these machinations. And then you have
the blind samurai guy,
blind swordsman, who is like, he was like the odd one out because he had no superpowers. In fact, he had he had a problem, like he had a detriment instead of a boon. And
he also seems to have some honor, like the other ones don't, right? Like he was like, I've been waiting to fight you, Jubei, right? You know, like he wants to defeat him in like one-on-one battle kind of thing, not trickery, not this like fucking subterfuge or anything like that. He wants to actually defeat him. So yeah, he was kind of the odd one out. And then there's the gunpowder chick too, who's like super cunning and ends up killing the guy. You know, whom he rejects, right? Like, you don't interest me even in the slightest. Of course not. You fucking. Yeah, I just thought it was funny how they explicitly made him into like a homosexual. I just thought that was hilarious because it's like I haven't watched this movie in like 10 years, and I'm like, oh yeah, I remember this guy. Yeah, he's kind of gay or whatever, but like whatever. I was just like expecting them not to say it, but then they did. So I don't know. Yeah. I find that hilarious. It's a very problematic movie. It's actually even like it's too much for like us, right? Like there's some degenerate stuff in there, like the like you mentioned before, like the rape scene or whatever, like with the stone guy or whatever, where he's like, don't let it cross your mind that I wouldn't mind raping a dead girl or whatever. And it's like, Jesus, guy, holy shit. Like, I didn't expect that. Let me make sure I hit the mute button before my fucking mom walks in. And then there's the Clawman guy that like does his little number on like this poor fucking ninja woman. Holy shit. Like, she just gets absolutely abused through the whole movie, you know? You can see like why progressives would be very, very upset about this movie, and it's not nice. Like I'm not celebrating that by any stretch of the imagination. And then there's like the scene where the Chamberlain is like banging this concubine while he's strategizing and giving orders and stuff. Yeah. It's just like it is an extremely masculine movie. Right?
Yeah, but I was actually going to bring that up about that scene when you were talking about the power of the Lord or the power of the house father. He's like literally smashing out this girl, like probably some concubine or whatever, and like they just come in, he just keeps smashing. He's like, yeah, do this, now get out of here, close the door. You know, that's a fucking boss.
Yeah, so fucking. I don't know. It's funny, man. Like the whole movie is so extreme. Like it's extreme in every way imaginable. um, and I mean, like some of it's tasteless. Like it goes too far, right? Like all that rape shit is just like that's degenerate and obviously. But like it's just extreme all the way through. And one other thing I wanted to mention before I forget about the female ninja, Kigero, as I think her name is. The way that what happens with her is actually, I think, some of the most based aspects of the movie, right?
Yeah.
Because she is obviously like deadly. She's a killer. She's like in some sense kind of a match for Jubei. But she's still a damsel in distress, right? Like she gets rescued. She rescues him too. But when he rescues her or whatever, she kind of puts on a brave face, but then she like breaks down crying later or whatever.
As soon as he walks away, she lets her feelings out.
Yep. Or she like shit talks Jubei after saving him. And then like immediately like the look on her face is like she feels bad about it, right? So she's like, I mean, she's obviously like this tough woman ninja and whatever. She can hang with the boys and stuff. But there's something that's like, I mean, she's still a woman, right? She's still, there's something that where she can't quite get the whole way there. She can't quite hang with the boys. You know what I mean? And like that's harsh. Like, for progressives they can't swallow that pill at all. Right. And of course she dies. And the only way that she can save him is by having sex with him or whatever. And it's like, that part would be considered problematic too, over sexualization, blah, 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 blah. But there is, it's not just like this sort of meathead, like, put a woman in her place kind of thing. There is a kind of heroism about her. I think that the fact that she like if we're being honest and when we're not just being like, I fucking hate women or whatever, it's like there is a female heroism in being able to kind of do that and being able to be feminine, right? And being able to be tough in your own way. Like if anybody sort of like thinks that women can't be heroic in their own way, it's like anybody who thinks that, I instantly know you've never watched a woman give birth. They have their own sort of heroism about them, right? And even though she dies, she sacrifices herself for him. And so I think the whole aspect of it's not just sort of heavy-handed, ham-fisted sort of like patriarchy, whatever stuff. There's a bit of subtlety about it. There's a bit of nuance there as well. So I like the way that character was handled in the movie.
Yeah, I agree completely. She's like she's kind of thrusted into it. Yeah, obviously by her own volition, but she remember the first scene, she cuts her hair and she's like, I have to do something. You can't leave without me. You're not going to leave me behind. We all have to do this. And she like unfortunately survives the attack and gets taken and all this kind of stuff. And throughout the whole movie, it develops like she has to maintain this kind of like, I'm a member of this ninja clan, so I have to be tough. But during the whole time, she's like going through all this emotional stuff. She can't handle it. She falls in love with Jubei, and she's just like she's like heroic in her own way. She's not like, there's a few fights that she like kind of like does well with her agility and her skill and everything, but she's not like kicking dudes' heads off, and it's not like modern female heroes where they like kill.
They're all these girl bosses, and
she's just not like she's not girl boss. She's a delicate, beautiful, loving woman that is part of what she was raised in and is following her duty and her fate and doing the best that she can. And she falls in love with the hero and gives herself to the hero so he can complete his task. And then it leads to that really, really awesome final scene with the burning ship, fighting in the burning ship.
Oh yeah.
And then also where Genma, he like reveals that he was their lord like the whole time. Remember that?
Yeah.
That was like,
that whole end scene, the end fight. Actually, it's something I think back to. I don't know, once in a while. It's like one of these scenes or like things that kind of stick with you for some reason. I don't know what it is. Just the thing about like how he's immortal and like he can revivify himself or whatever. Like his head gets cut off, and he's able to like somehow come back to life. He gets like a giant stake running, like, or beam, like rafter beam run through him at the end or whatever, and he's still alive. And Jubei, like, you know, headbutts him and just caves his head in, and he still comes back. It's just like this guy can't be killed, right? And you think to yourself, like, well, what would kill someone like that has that power or whatever? And of course, in the end, the way that he dies is the worst fate ever. If he's truly immortal, he gets encased in gold, and he sinks to the bottom of the ocean to live forever in darkness. The worst fate, you know, worse than hell. That's like, yeah, that's fucking evil shit right there, right?
That's like,
but it's like it builds it up over the movie where you hate him so much that you're like, fuck yeah, when it happens. You know what I mean? Sorry, go ahead. What were you going to say?
Oh no, I was just going to mention that motif of torturous immortality, like imprisonment and damnation for people that step out of line and try to overthrow the natural order and defy the ruling powers. You know, you see this with Loki, you see this with Prometheus, right? This idea of when you try to defy and overthrow the ruling powers and become like powerful yourself, because that was Genma's whole thing. Remember, he even betrayed the lords he was working with, right? He's like, I am the Dark Shogun. I am in charge now. Fuck you guys. You guys were just, you know, my way to get to the top or whatever. And he just like screws over everybody. He's like, I'm going to be the boss. I overthrow the natural ruling order, the way of things. And he ends up in like the most excruciating damnation forever, trapped at the bottom of the ocean, encased in gold. You know what I mean? It's like Prometheus with his guts ripped out, or Loki having venom dripped in his eyes. You know what I mean? Forever and ever till the end of time.
Yeah, it's something about that last scene has always kind of stuck with me. I don't know why it comes back. It's not like in my practical life, I have to like, you know, figure out how to kill some immortal dude very often, but it's like it just comes back to me. I don't know why, but yeah, that's part of why this movie is so good. There's so many iconic scenes. There's so many crazy little aspects to it, and everything. The only other thing I think that is worthy of mention here, that I kind of had in the back of my mind, is to give props to the score, to the soundtrack of the movie.
Exactly what I was thinking just now.
Really?
Yeah, it's exactly what I was
great
thinking.
minds, right? Yeah, I think that the score really gives the movie its atmosphere. You get those like, you know, taiko drums or whatever, especially at the end, and all that. It's an interesting mix of traditional Japanese instrumentation, like with the koto and other things. Maybe that's Chinese. I don't know. Traditional East Asian instrumentation mixed with like a nice orchestral score. I mean, at the end, you've got this kind of like karaoke sounding shit or whatever, but throughout the whole movie, it's just like there's not a misstep in the whole thing, as far as the soundtrack or anything else really, other than the degenerate shit.
Yeah.
But yeah, the score is just fucking awesome from top to tail. It actually reminds me a lot of this video game called Samurai Showdown. I don't know if you ever played that.
It's a fighting game, right?
Yeah, it was a fighting game, probably around mid 90s. It came out for the Super Nintendo. It was probably an arcade game, I think. But that had a wicked awesome score as well. It was the same thing. Like it was kind of samurai feudal Japanese style with I think it was actually all traditional Japanese instrumentation for the most part. And yeah, it just reminded me a lot of, I mean, the two reminded me a lot of each other, but I love the score. I think that the soundtrack for Ninja Scroll is like a 9 or a 10 out of 10. It totally fits the movie.
Mm-hmm. Brilliant. Yeah. So Ninja Scroll was it's a great movie. It is a wonderful piece of retro pop culture that we can go back and enjoy as adults. It's not something, you know, I know this is a dad show, but this is not something you want to show to your kids.
Oh God, no.
No, this is something that some guys might not want to show to their wives. It's rough, but it is, like Mike mentioned, top to bottom, from the score to the art style to the themes, the narratives, and all the stuff going on with it. It is one of the best, at least animated, action movies of all time. It is a tremendous watch. It is thrilling. It is weird. It's spooky. It's turbo violent. It's a Giga Chad, Japanese Giga Chad sword and sorcery movie.
Yeah, and my sort of like overall impression of it here, before we wrap it up, is that, and hopefully this isn't getting too predictable, is that it's a very Odinic movie. If there was any non-Indo-European people who can understand the Odinic, it's the Japanese, with Shinto and everything. This movie has it. It's super fucking weird. It's esoteric. It's mystical. It's like the tones in it, both like the soundtrack and the visuals, are extremely dark. There's some stuff that's beyond the pale in this movie, and that's part of the Odinic too. And it's, of course, ultra violent. So yeah, this is my favorite anime of all time, and I'll be honest, it's my favorite action movie of all time. I realize that's going to be an unpopular take, but for me, nothing kind of gets me going like watching some of the fight scenes in Ninja Scroll, like that kill scene where the rock guy gets killed by his own like boomerang thing. Is just like, holy shit. When I first saw that, yeah, and then he slides down it or whatever, I'm just like, the first time I saw that, I was like, ripped out of my tree just watching TV and be like, what the fuck just happened? Like, so anyway, that is the effect of the uncanny, weird, beyond anything you've seen before kind of Odinic aspect. And as far as a movie is concerned, I think that this really fits it. So yeah, for me, this is the best anime, hands down. It just stands heads and shoulders above even like Ghost in the Shell for me. So yeah, I will let you, Dave, have the last word, or if you want to just take us out here.
Yeah, let's wrap it up. I think everything that I wanted to say, I said. I love this film. I think folks out there, that if you haven't seen this film, go check it out. It is one of the few animes that I would recommend. Even some of the other stuff from the director are interesting to watch. Wicked City, obviously Vampire Hunter D. He's got a few really good works. He's kind of our guy over there. He's the guy that really introduced Japanese culture and animation to Western people in a palatable, accessible kind of way that wasn't weird and too foreign and all that, at least in my opinion. So check out Ninja Scroll if you haven't already. Let us know in the comments what you thought about it, or if you're a big Ninja Scroll fan, what you thought about our analysis of it. If you have any additional thoughts or anything, or even suggestions for other episodes, please leave it in the comments and give us a share. Share us into your Telegram chats, your Discord servers. Share us on your Twitters. And we got more Culture Dads coming up. I think next week we're going to talk about old school UFC, old school the beginnings of mixed martial arts. So we're going to talk about that and get into that. We got a lot more stuff planned for you guys. I hope you guys really enjoy it and all that good stuff. So if you like this, well, if you're listening now, you're already signed up. So imperiumpress.org/podcast. We appreciate every single one of you guys that help support this program and support Imperium Press as a whole. So many hails and blessings to you. If you want to check out what I'm doing, if you're in the mood for a little bit of fiction, go over to thebizarchives.com. Follow on Twitter and Telegram at The Bizarchives. And Imperium Press is also on Telegram. We're back on Twitter, right? With Imperium Press?
Not anymore, baby. They fucking yeeted me from that again.
I yeeted from Twitter again.
This is the third account that they burned, and you knew it was going to happen. I mean, I put the V in there as a U for Imperium, and I was like, that's going to do it, man. All those fucking mods are never going to be able to work this one out. And I got there for like a few months. I got a good few months in. but eventually they got me. So there you go.
The V instead of the U. That's like the equivalent of like going to a bar that you're like banned from with like a fake mustache.
Yeah.
Greetings, fellow patrons. Yeah. All right.
It worked for a while, man.
It's so funny. All right, folks. I'll see you guys next time. Culture Dads. Take care. Hails and blessings.
You're listening to an episode of the latest Culture Dads, Age of Sword and Cassette, where two fathers and community leaders discuss modern culture from a timeless perspective. Head on over to culturedads.com for podcasts every week.